Okay. Moving on, we have our final panel for the day. I'd like to welcome the panelists onto the stage, please. If you could just come up. The topic is what innovative deployment strategies can achieve 100% broadband coverage. And Graham's topic is a good segue into this topic. Edward, can you sit there?
Sure.
Do you mind? No, I need to sit here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you mind? Thank you. All right. So introducing from the right, we have Edward Scheiterer. He's a managing director of AdTran. We have Karin Aal, the president of the Fiber to the Home Council Europe. We have Stefan van Hastel, marketing director for fixed networks from Alcatel-Lucent. And we have Alessandro Caranci. He's the commercial director of satellite provider Eutelsat. So let's talk a little bit about technology to begin with. If I can ask if there have been any new or recent technology developments that are helping to lower the cost of deploying next-generation broadband. And also, if you can comment on how this is changing the mix of the different topologies, fiber to the node, fiber to the home. Do you see any changes now, and do you see any changes going forward? Starting from Edward.
Now, coming from Germany, I would say the first prominent example is probably Deutsche Telekom. As probably most of you have read or heard about, they have decided to deploy vectoring throughout the whole network. So, in my view, that's not a big change in the strategy as such, but it's a first step towards I think, the final goal, eventually to have fiber everywhere. So vectoring for Deutsche Telekom, I would say, is a big change going forward. They are deploying it as we speak. And I think it's not only Deutsche Telekom, there are other operators in Germany as well as in Europe overall. So vectoring plays a big role going forward. If you look at a complete other country like Australia, I would say you also have seen recently a change in the way going forward. I think they are now considering, as you already incorporated in your question, that the whole basket of technologies available right now. Yeah, so fiber to the cabinet, to the curb, to the distribution point, and fiber to the home. So I think the NBN and Telstra as such, I think they are now looking at this more realistic way of what can be done in a shorter period of time. I mean, regarding the total cost of ownership, I would say it's a little bit dependent on what time period you are considering. But I think fact is sometimes due to the competition or simply by the demand of the end user, they have to move on with the existing technologies. Yeah.
Okay, Karin?
Yeah, well, I represent Fiber to the Home Council Europe, so of course I will talk about fiber as access method. Now we see different aspects of it. To start with, I can say, looking at, take my home country, Sweden, for example, when you talk about home broadband and 100% coverage as a target, it's of course very difficult to reach 100% with fiber to the home. But it should be feasible to reach at least 90%, and then you have to look above 90% and see what you can do with it to be to have a solid solution for them. And I think, as Edward also is mentioning, that you need to take in mind all the possible solutions that brings the value to the end customer, so you don't exclude them from the digital revolution, and you include them in the developments, which is important. Not to exclude them. But I think it's difficult also to see Europe as a whole region. It's very different from country to country. You have different possibilities and regulatory statements as well. I think we have a very big possibility to do more with fiber today. We see in different countries doing parallel infrastructure, operators building in the same roads, for example, the same areas. I understand that it happens, I see it a lot, but using the investments to cover more, to reach out further, outside the city centers, outside the very dense areas, is also a possibility to monitor it better. So I think it's important to look at it. We also have the cost reduction proposal today from the Commission, and I think it's one way to move forward, to reach more people, to include more people in this transformation at the moment. I don't think that we should be too harsh when we judge other access technologies, but I think we need to have our minds set for the end game and see how we reach it most efficiently.
So fiber to the home is the end game,
Yeah.
but there may be different ways of getting there.
I think there is a different way to get there, but you need to do as much as you can from the beginning with the fiber, and then see how you solve the most rural areas or most distant areas. That will be very hard, of course. Yeah.
Okay, Stefan?
So I think there's two technology trends that are worth mentioning, and one market trend. In terms of technology, it's clear that, well, if you wanted to do ultra broadband services, if you wanted to deliver ultra broadband services, a couple of years ago, even as recent as 2 years ago, there were very limited options. Basically, fiber to the home was what you had to do. It's clear that when we announced vectoring here at Broadband World Forum 2 years ago, we suddenly created a new option, which was FTTX deployment. Suddenly you could do 100 megabit per second with FTTX. That's a first trend. A second trend is that now you see, last year you had a choice between FTTH and FTTN with vectoring. Now we also see all sorts of other deployment models popping up. We see fiber to the telephone pole, fiber to the basement, fiber to the sewer. Wherever you can actually access the copper, you can install a small system and use vectoring to deliver 100 megabit per second. What does this mean for operators and for connecting more people? Basically, you have more options now. And for every street, for every city, for every customer almost, you can select the best option. You have to do fiber to the home as much as possible. But in areas where the case for fiber to the home is difficult to make, you have now a ton of options available to connect these people in a cost-effective way. And in the end, that means that you can connect more people for the same amount of money, and you can connect them faster as well. So that helps you get to that 100% coverage. And as a market trend, I would say that we see, while 2 years ago there were two religions, so to speak. Either you were doing fiber to the home or you were doing fiber to the nodes with VDSL2. Today we see operators doing mixing and matching these deployment models. It's a very pragmatic approach. You simply select from a toolkit of solutions. You select the best solution to connect a neighborhood, to connect the street, to connect the city. And that's going to help us get to that 100% coverage for ultra broadband services faster in the end.
Okay, so more options. That's the key takeaway here.
Absolutely.
Okay. Alessandro?
I'm working in the satellite telecommunications, so I see this topic from another point of view. We are someone that can complement the other technologies to reach really 100% of the population with the good broadband. What is new? Because this is true for satellite since 50 years, but now something new happened in Europe because my company, Eutelsat, decided to launch a new satellite that is of the family of high throughput satellite. It means satellites that are able to host 30 times the capacity of the older satellites at the same cost. So now we are able to perform better services with a lower cost. So we have to see that this is a new infrastructure for Europe. It was present similar satellites over US. And this is permitting us to reduce the threshold where a satellite can be interesting as a means of transmission for broadband. Because basically the business model is that we have the same cost for connecting someone in the center of Amsterdam or in a rural area. CapEx per user is a very small amount, and the OpEx can be higher. But now we are able to have a good OpEx. We are commercializing services at 20 megs over Europe. We have overcome 100,000 users now in 1 year and a half. And this deployment is going quite well. So basically, we have to see satellite as an option that can be put with the other options, fiber to home, fiber to node, then DSL, then you go at a certain point wireless, at a certain point satellite is the best option for reaching everyone. It is very important to reach everyone because if you want to develop services that can permit Europe to reduce costs for e-government, for other things, everybody must be connected. And we are here for this.
Okay, now moving on, we have a lot of developments on the mobile, in the mobile world. We have lots of LTE deployments around the world. How is that going to help the fixed world and the fixed business case for whether it's fiber to the home, fiber to the cabinet? Are you seeing a lot of deployments of fiber to the cell tower that then helps to subsidize the neighborhoods around it? Karin?
Yes, we do in several countries, and one of the most frequent questions I get is this a threat to fiber to the home? I don't see it that way, because when I talk to the network owners, they're very happy about the LTE and 4G deployment because they need to supply fiber for the towers. And the more 4G or LTE we need, the more fiber it's, of course, getting out there. And that's also a way of getting the fiber closer to the end customer in the rural areas. So this is a possibility for the network owners also to get a way of new funding for the long-distance networks. I think it's a very interesting development. We see it all over Europe, and I think it's also outside Europe as well. Of course, it's also a way of getting new income in new networks, new revenue streams, which could also subsidize, internally subsidize and finance further deployment. Apart from this, I think also we will see new models working together, like private-public partnerships and so forth, to really reach out in the most difficult areas. We don't see that many projects today, but I think for the coming period, we will definitely have some good cases to show.
Okay. Stefan?
So absolutely, I think high-speed wireless broadband or wireless ultra broadband is really one of the key drivers for FTTX, FTTH deployments. 2 reasons, or 3 reasons actually. I think first of all, you need to backhaul all that wireless traffic. That's one, that's kind of obvious. Second, coverage is also very important for wireless services. I mean, it's nice if you can get 4G in one spot, but if you move to the next street and you lose your 4G signal, you're not going to be happy. So you roll out 4G or ultra broadband wireless, you need to do it everywhere. So that's another reason to leverage existing fixed network infrastructure, fiber infrastructure. Third, the business case for fixed access, for fixed networks, is really built on take rates. I mean, you need to have a minimum take rate to make the business case works. Guess what? If you can add wireless subscribers, wireless backhaul, you basically have more subscribers on your network, and it helps you make the business case for your FTTX or your fiber deployment.
Right. Okay. Edward?
Yeah, in my view, this doesn't really, it's not any different to the normal fixed access trends and technology. I mean, the traffic needs to be backhauled from wherever it comes, yeah. And sure, fiber is one way of doing it, but there are also intermediate steps doing it. So I think that the same rule applies, whatever makes sense from timing perspective and from a cost perspective, the operators will roll out, yeah. So very similar to the residential part.
Okay. Alessandro?
From our perspective, LTE is a technology that is reducing the digital divide, so is in competition with our niche from one side. From another side, it's a big opportunity for 2 reasons. First of all, we see that mobile wireless network are more considerate not for increase the level of coverage, but for giving mobility to people in real populated areas. The second is that we were speaking about the need of making trunking to give a backhaul to a wireless network. And sometimes fiber is too expensive because the population is, in some areas, is scarce population. And so the same satellite can be used as a trunking system for connecting wireless distributions. And for us, it is a very interesting market as well.
Okay. Now, what about network sharing? We've seen some announcements in Europe, but my understanding is it hasn't always been successful. We're still at the beginning of this trend. What do you think is happening there? How is this actually working in terms of lowering the total cost? Are they sharing the risks as well as the benefits? Anything that you can share, starting with Karin?
It's a very hot topic indeed. Also looking at the cost reduction proposal. Well, we see it working in some places, and in other places it's more difficult. Of course, the one investing in the first infrastructure that is supposed to be shared is taking all the risk from the beginning, because you don't know if you have anybody else who wants to be a part of your infrastructure. But we see that happening. We had a very early case in Stockholm with Stokab, which is also one of the biggest passive networks. Yeah, well, I think it's a trend. I think it's also needed. You heard also from Stefan about the trying to make more use of the investment money accessible. So this is a trend. I think it will be a fact, and I think it's a business model that will be more established and implemented throughout the coming years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Edward?
Yeah, to build on that, I think network sharing is already there. Actually, in my home country, so to say, it's mandatory. Yeah, bit sharing was a kind of regulatory request to enable vectoring. There are all kind of technical models you can think of how to share networks. Yeah, some of them are easier, some of them are more difficult from a management perspective and administrative point of view. But it's going to happen, and it's already there. Yeah. So I think we will see more of that due to the big investment in the new networks.
Okay. Stefan?
So I agree. I mean, we see already various examples where this is happening. It makes sense from the two main perspectives. One, from a business case perspective. You share the risk, you share the investment, so that makes total sense. It also makes sense from a benefit for all mankind perspective. I mean, if you have to cover an entire country, if you want to provide ultra broadband for all, having multiple operators competing in the same city for the same subscribers is not going to get you to that 100% coverage as fast as if each operator would focus on a different area and they give each other access to their networks. And the technologies are completely in place. This is already used in many countries. Australia, NBN was a network based on one infrastructure owner, different service providers using that network, using Bitstream. And in the example of vectoring, there is a technology constraint there, so you can't really have multiple operators in the same location, so there you actually have to use Bitstream. And various mechanisms are being put in place in countries to allow that to happen. And to make sure that operators get fair access to the available infrastructure. So I think those problems are being addressed, and we'll see more of that.
Yeah, that's also an interesting perspective, because we see parts of markets where this doesn't work due to unregulated circumstances. So this is also something you need to analyze and adopt regulatory-wise on a local, national level.
Okay. So just before I move on to, are you saying that there'll be a rise of more neutral hosts, perhaps? I mean, again, in Australia, it's run into all sorts of issues, political issues, but is that where we're going?
You see both models. It can be a neutral infrastructure provider. There's also examples where operators simply decide to work together and don't need an independent party to operate the network. As long as there are sufficient agreements in place, you're good to go.
Edwin, you wanted to say something?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, all right. Alessandro, any comments?
About the sharing of the infrastructure, always from our perspective, we integrate the network of, we can be considered part of the network of a fixed operator to complement the network to reach or to manage other topics like seasonality of services, offload of traffic. And so we love this concept because it's permitting us to become part of the infrastructure. Let's say on the other side, if you see the infrastructure of our network, of our satellite, is based on thousands of kilometers of fiber. So it means that basically we are now sharing satellite and fiber with many players to permit them to reach in a more effective way needs and areas.
And by the way, sharing infrastructure is also a very common practice in wireless networks. So it's, if it's acceptable there, then obviously it should also be acceptable in fixed networks.
But there is a higher level of difficulty in doing so, is it not? Okay. What about on the any technology advances on the CPE side? We've had previous speakers who've talked about NFV, eventually leading to virtualized CPE. There's been a couple of announcements. Do you think that's, as we migrate to next generation services, is that something that's just around the corner? Is that going to help lower the cost of broadband? Edward?
Yeah, I mean, as we have seen this morning, devices are getting smaller and smaller, yeah, like the dot. And that also applies to CPEs, and you actually can see at the show here some of the examples. But it's not only the physical, I would say, size which method. You also have to get out the complexity of these devices and move it eventually into the cloud, which then leads to the SDN discussion. I think this is ongoing as we speak. There are first steps on the way, but I think this is probably the biggest challenge to overcome, to get the complexity out of the devices and move them back into the cloud. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe Stefan?
I think one trend is definitely, well, there are some experiments with CPE virtualization, I would say. Let's say that's an interesting experiment. Something else that caught my eye actually was the CPEs that combine wireless and fixed broadband. And operators in Germany have been talking about that concept. The idea is that you have both wireless and fixed broadband. Why not have a CPE that bonds the two together? You have one pipe, you have smart traffic management that can send non-critical traffic over the fixed line, and that will send other traffic over the, well, non-critical high volume traffic over the fixed line, and lower volume traffic over the wireless line. One can act as a backup for the other. That's another advantage. So that's kind of interesting. And although not CPE related, you can't help but notice that you see a general resemblance in architectures or in architecture trends between wireless networks and fixed networks. And in wireless networks, you're going to small cells. Fixed networks, you have these small nodes that are coming, micro nodes that are starting to appear. It's a very similar deployment model. It's a small node very close to the end user. There seems to be room for synergies there. I mean, if you have a small vectoring node or a cabinet somewhere in the field, why not turn that into an LTE base station as well, or a wireless small cell? You have backhaul in place, you have power in place. So there seems to be, I know this is not strictly CPE related, but it's very close to the CPE. And it's a similar trend where you see fixed and wireless more or less going into the same direction.
Okay. Karin, any comments?
No, I don't.
Okay. Alessandro?
Yeah, the cost of CPE for satellite services was really a big barrier. It is changing a lot now because basically we are now reaching a number of terminals. We are targeting to have 1 million of our subscribers, so this is permitting to have on the market terminals that now CPEs that are really cost effective. We are speaking about few euros. And this is a big important point for the development of this technology as a means of transmission for reducing digital divide. On the other side, we have the reduction of the cost of CPE and the improvement of the performances because we are now able to, with a single modem that is a few hundred euro, for a customer less than 100 euro, let's say. We are able to reach 50 megabit per second, and something that 10 years ago or 5 years ago was not on the market.
Okay. And we've talked about this in the previous panels, but I thought I'd touch upon it again. what is the government or the regulator doing to encourage innovation in closing the gaps in broadband coverage? We've talked about the need for funding, private-public partnerships, but in terms of innovation or technology, what should the government do, and what is it doing now? Edward?
I think there's no country on this globe which doesn't have a kind of broadband initiative, or even above the countries like European Commission and other entities are, I would say, kicking off one initiative after the other. At the end, I think what we are seeing is it's always the operators, carriers who have to take the investment. So I think one way, and you see it, what government are doing is to adjust the regulations so it can be done easier, like we have recently seen in the European countries or in Germany in particular, or what we see in Australia going on and in other regions. So regulation, I think, plays a major role. Other than that, I would say, at least in the Western world, it's about competition, and that, as usually, works best.
Okay. Karin?
Well, I think that's a very important statement. The competition on the markets are crucial for a nice rollout. I also think it's interesting to see how we stimulate and promote the rural projects that are popping up in the different countries in different shapes and formats. And I think that is also something to actually to promote more, to work more with, because it's amazing how much they can do and achieve actually with their own will to get connected, and that is also something to make best practice out of and do case studies of, because a lot of the market, parts of the market that we see now connected wouldn't be connected if it wasn't for the people themselves. And this is something for the regulatory offices to have a look at and promote and find ways to facilitate, but also for the policy, life of the policy, to find a suitable way to stimulate.
Okay. Stefan?
I think there's 3 steps. I think the first step is to set targets, and that has happened everywhere. No target, nothing's going to happen. So we see these ultra broadband targets everywhere. I think the second step is to not get hung up on a specific technology. It's about delivering. If you want to create socioeconomic benefits, you want to make sure everyone has access to e-health, e-services. You just need to make sure that you can deliver a minimum bandwidth. And I think getting that minimum level of bandwidth, in Europe it's 30 meg for everyone and 100 meg for half of the population, that's really key. You need to get that minimum speed to everyone. And in order to do that, to reach everyone, you're going to mix and match whatever you have and leverage whatever you have. We're going to see a combination of wireless broadband, fiber broadband, FTTX broadband, and cable broadband. And we're going to need that if we really want to get to that 100%. I would say the third step, so don't get hung up on a certain technology. The third step, I think, is to channel funding to in the right direction. I mean, dense urban areas, they will take care of themselves. I mean, operators are queuing to cover those areas. But as Karen said, I mean, make sure that nobody gets left out. I mean, focus on, make sure there's funding available for the rural areas, promote broadband deployments in hard-to-serve areas. I think that's the key role for governments.
Okay, now Alessandro?
From our point of view, 2 main points. The first is to consider satellite as all the other technologies. So when is the best means to give broadband to someone to put funds on this? The second is another point that is very important and not expensive. The satellite customers are spread by definition, because if they were concentrated, they were not satellite customers. And the government can be aggregator of the demand. The most difficult part, the most expensive part of our job is to be known by the customers and to reach them. But we have the solution for their problems. So to become an aggregator of demand can be something that is not expensive, but can give to the satellite industry a very good help, and to the population as well.
Okay. So we have just a couple of minutes left. Are there any questions from the audience for the panel? So it looks like everyone wants to go home. So just starting with Edward, is there any other innovation or deployment strategy that we haven't talked about? And can you just wrap up with closing comments there?
Yeah, maybe I build on what my colleague said regarding the kind of combinations you can think of traditional fixed access, wireless, mobile, and what you have. And I think going forward we will see more of that. If you think that, for instance, certain operators have a Wi-Fi access point in the home of each of their subscribers, and you think of what you can do with that, I mean, there are ideas going around. Some of that is beyond the idea stage. I think we will see much more of that, because you can think about on-load, off-load, all kind of combinations, bandwidth increase, and so on. And operators and, of course, suppliers are working in this area. I think we will see more of that going forward. On the other side, I must say, being a user myself, the user experience, there's a lot of room for improvement to make it seamlessly for all of us to actually use what is already out there. Yeah? I think there's also an opportunity which is to some extent, in my view, untapped. There's a lot of bandwidth out there if operators would just figure out how to use it. Yeah?
Well, I think we see signs now that we are actually on a tipping point on a very massive fiber deployment all over our member states within the EU region. And this tipping point and the rollouts will, of course, also generate new innovative ideas how to deploy more efficiently and how to make most out of the investments and the technology. So I think that is a very interesting time now coming up for us. Also, these new initiatives brings new revenue streams within the networks due to traffic, new services and content. So I think we have only seen the start of it, and there is so much more to learn and to find out. So I'm excited for the coming years to follow the development.
Okay. Stefan?
So I fully agree, these are exciting times. So I think that never have there been so many options available to deliver ultra broadband services, and all of them are fiber-based. All of them allow you to deliver ultra broadband services. So I think there's no more excuse to not connect someone today. And options are actually going to increase over the future. I mean, we're working on next generation fiber solutions, TWD-MPON. We're working on next generation copper solutions, G.fast. So operators will have, from a technology perspective, all the tools are there to connect every subscriber that you want to connect. So I would say no more excuses.
Okay. Alessandro?
From our point of view, also satellite industry is growing a lot because we have to be comparable with the others. That means that, and things are going very fast. It's an exciting moment for us as well because this is the first case where satellite is for consumers and it's not just for companies, and we are growing a lot. And the new satellites that will be launched in the next years we will have higher performance again, and we will be a player of this 100% ultra broadband world.
Okay, just one last follow-up question. Since Karin, you talked about the tipping point, why do you think it's happened now? Is there a sudden understanding that broadband will lead to other great things, or is there something else? Is it the recession ending? Is there a particular thing that's driving this, do you think?
That's a session in itself.
Yeah.
No, I think it's not a sudden development. It's been out there for quite some time. I think operators, end users, and deployers are very aware today on what they want and what they need. It's new content coming up, and that also creates new need and demand for fiber and new ultra high-speed broadband. So there are many aspects coming together at the moment that brings us to the tipping point.
Okay, anybody else want to talk about it?
No, I think that it has been said several times this morning in the keynotes. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about connected society. I think it will be a connected world in total. And I think we all feel something is changing right now by observing ourselves or our kids, so that the way how communication is going to be. Yeah? So I think it will be interesting looking back in 20 years from now what we have said here on stage.
Yes. Okay, well, last opportunity to ask questions. Oh, yes, we have a question there.
So one of the comments very interesting, the comparison between the various technologies and approaches they're taking in terms of deployment as well as solving some common problems. But often we notice in service providers that these different technologies are handled by different departments and silos. So how do we make sure that the learnings from one technology to the other, or even within the same department, if we have two one-types, how do we now aggregate these seamlessly one with the other?
No, and I agree with that observation. I mean, in many cases, the business cases for FTTX are, not in many cases, in cases, business case for fiber for FTTX is made without involvement of the wireless department. Obviously, that's not something that we as a vendor or that policymakers can fix. That's something that the operators have to address. But I think there's a growing realization that it simply makes a lot of sense to leverage one for the other. So I think as that realization grows, as it becomes clear how one can actually make, how wireless can help you make the business case for fiber to the home, or how fiber can help you backhaul your mobile traffic in a cheap way, I think naturally those organizations within an operator, if they are different organizations to begin with, I think they will naturally start working together.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Edward, Karen, Stefan, and Alessandro. Thank you very much.